The market has this massive Brexit cloud over it at the moment, and it appears as though everyone is essentially now willing to take an economic hit. Joshua Mahony, IG. Well, US employment growth unexpectedly slowed for the third consecutive month in September, non-farm payrolls rising by 156,000. How do you expect this news to impact the Fed's plan?
Well, look, I guess on face value, it certainly wasn't the most inspiring bunch of data coming out of the US. But I think that when you take the moment to look at the figures, it's not necessarily something that's really going to hold back the Fed, in my opinion. The US employment situation isn't a massive issue at the moment. You know, unemployment, yes, it did tick higher, but a lot of that's going to be down to the fact that we saw the rise in participation rate up to 62.9 from 62.8. So that's a positive in itself. They will want to see the participation rate rise, and they'll know that as that rises, generally that's going to put an upward pressure on the unemployment rate. In terms of the payrolls number, again, that kind of undershot expectations, but we did see that offset somewhat by seeing the previous number revised higher. So again, there's not too much to worry about within that. We did see a rise in terms of average earnings. So I think on face value, it wasn't particularly great. But, you know, when you take into account a few of the other factors, it's not something to particularly be worried about. I don't think it necessarily writes off December. And I think largely we're just on to the next one. And, you know, it's not something that we're really going to consider as a game changer, so to speak.
Okay, and the Eurozone bond market was rattled on Tuesday over reports that the ECB may be considering tapering its bond buying program. What are your thoughts, having had a chance to digest this news?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing is whether it's true or not, because that's probably the most important part of it. I guess that there's a feeling there's sort of no smoke without fire, so you know it has to have come from somewhere. That being said, you know it sort of reminds me a little bit of some of the things that have happened previously at the ECB, most notably. But you know some of the other central banks, where sometimes you'll see a central bank actually looking into the markets, and they will feel like the markets aren't correctly pricing a certain event, so to speak, and they will try to adjust market expectations. There's a feeling in my mind that this isn't born out of something that's actually going to happen. It's born out of wanting to essentially shift market expectations. I don't think that they're going to taper their asset purchase program. I think that the Eurozone has this massive Brexit cloud hang over it at the moment. And what we're seeing at the moment, we've seen it from Francois Hollande, we're seeing it from Angela Merkel, is that essentially everyone's now seemingly willing to take a hit from a sort of economical standpoint, so that they can sort of uphold some of the main tenets of the EU. Now that means that we're likely to see if that was to go through and what they're saying is true, and essentially they're willing to put into place a deal that's going to hurt them as well as hurting the UK. Then that means that the Eurozone is likely to be suffering throughout that period, which means we've got 2 years of uncertainty, followed by a potential period where we could see, you know, significant sort of reduction in trade and some deals put through that aren't necessarily in the interests of the economic side of things, but more in the interests of keeping the EU together in the long run.
And lastly for today, which other key economic news events this week have you taken note of that could prove to be significant moving forwards?
It's a bit of a quiet week, quite honestly. Coming off the back of the first week of the month, that's the week when everything seems to happen, and certainly it has this week. I would say it's the start of the US earnings season, so Alcoa kicking it off on Tuesday. That'll be interesting. That means that we've also got to keep an eye out for some major earnings numbers coming out and what kind of impact they can have on sort of sector outlooks and the indices as a whole over in the US. Also got the FOMC minutes on Wednesday. Of course, it's always interesting to pour through those and see if there's any sort of change in tact from the committee. But as we look going forward, I think December is the one hope we've got for 2016. So for a 2016 hike. So you know whether these FOMC minutes are going to change anything to do with that, well, it remains to be seen. But of the week, I would say the FOMC minutes and the start of earnings season probably the two things to be watching out for.
Thank you, Josh. Be sure to check back on Monday for the week ahead with the Dukascopy TV team. Goodbye for now.